As you would introduce a child to your family, the same way you have to treat your pet if you're choosing to be a pet parent.
Your dog does not need calcium supplements. They just need good food, and they don't need a lot of multivitamins. Again, just give good food.
You cannot at a point say that, look, I'm facing problems, I could possibly be given a pink slip, I'm so sorry. You just abandon the pet. That should not be the intent.
They tend to give in and just buy a dog, and then it becomes less of a pet and more of a toy for the kid to play with.
Normal household buying pets, okay? So I think an estimation of approximately 10,000 rupees that you allocate towards the benefit of the pet.
You can never be a vet and not take one dog home, one cat home, just for fostering, just to put it back, nurse it back to health, and then just get attached and keep it.
I'll take your word for it.
It's always that way.
If you've had a dog, you'll know the meaning of unconditional love. If you've had a cat, you know who the boss is. In both those cases, you'll probably agree when people say that having a pet is like having a child. But if you've never had a pet, and if that's something that you're considering, have you thought of all of the implications of bringing one home? If you're on the fence, or if the idea of owning a pet has been rumbling around in the back of your mind, then this conversation will help you make the right decision. This is Big Decisions on NDTV Profit, and I'm Alex Matthew. Before we jump into this conversation, though, you've heard of German Shepherds and Siberian Huskies and Persian cats. But do you know much about the Indian breeds of cats and dogs? Animals that are endemic to India? Yukta joins in to tell you a little more.
A recent survey by the Pet Adoption Foundation revealed that 70% of those who adopt pets prefer foreign breeds. But why are Indian breeds so often overlooked? Indies are the most well suited to our climate, so here's a list of native breeds that you can look out for when you consider bringing a pet home. The Indian Pariah dog is resilient and adaptable, while the Indian Spitz has a charming fluffy coat. Let's not forget the Mudhol Hound, which is sleek and agile. The Rajpalyam dog is known for its striking white coat, while the Rampur Greyhound is graceful and fast. More of a cat person? Don't worry. The Indian Billy is adaptable, quick, and has a short coat, while the Spotted Cat and Jungle Cat are also standout choices. Research indicates that adoption rates for these native breeds are relatively low. A 2022 study by the Indian Veterinary Association found that only 15% of urban pet adoptions were for Indian breeds, compared to 60% for foreign breeds. Additionally, the Animal Welfare Board of India reported in 2023 that awareness about these breeds is limited, with only 22% of potential pet owners considering them. A 2024 report by the Pet Adoption and Welfare Network indicated that while overall pet ownership in India is rising, adoption rates remain low, with only 25% of pets being adopted from shelters. But why shop when you can adopt, especially for these wonderful native breeds? So next time you're looking for a new furry friend, think local.
My guests today are Dr. Vrushali Jadhav and Harshvardhan Roongta. Thank you so much to the both of you for taking the time today, and it's going to be an educative conversation, I think, for all of us.
Hi.
So I want to start, and Harsh, let me say at the onset, you don't have a pet. I checked with you before we started this conversation. So if you've got questions for the doctor, then please do ask.
Most certainly, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so let's start with the first question, which is, what are the kinds of dogs and cats, and assuming that these are the small animals that you would normally have in a city,
Right.
Or otherwise? So what do you need to bear in mind when you are deciding to go out and get one?
So I believe one should really understand the space that they have at home and research about the breeds that they want to get. So if you have a small house with a one-room kitchen, I would want you to think twice while getting a 70-kilo dog. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
That breaks into animal welfare, and you're being mean in a way. So just try and not do that. Think of something which is 4-kilo dogs, 5-kilo dogs, or maybe get a cat. So something that fits in your space and you can accommodate them well, because right now they are small, they are puppies, but once they get bigger, they are going to grow in size, and that time leaving them off
Is going to be problematic.
Yes.
So, so therefore, the space is the first and foremost concern,
Yes.
right?
Space,
Climate is also a
breed.
factor.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're living in a place like Mumbai where it is hot and humid, you should think twice before getting a breed like a Siberian because they do need colder climates. They are born for those things. So when you're bringing them in your household, you're actually again compromising their lifestyle, and thereby it does cause them to have troubles. They get a lot of skin issues, they get respiratory issues. So it can be all avoided if you just make the right choice.
And there is a financial implication there as well, Harsh, because I've seen people bring in furry dogs and animals, and they ultimately have to have the AC on at all points of time.
That's true.
It's not something that they factored in when they consider getting an animal or getting a pet. It's like having a family member ultimately. Is that something that you've considered?
Yeah, so actually, right. So Alex, if you're planning to get a living being, so a pet is also a living being, right? So as you would introduce a child to your family, the same way you have to treat your pet if you're choosing to be a pet parent, right? So if you're getting a living being to your house, please make sure that you have enough financial resources for the food and shelter. I mean, of course, clothing is not what we're talking about, but food, clothing, shelter. You need to ensure that you have...
Clothing is optional.
Clothing is optional, and it could be probably some fancy dress kind of a competition that they participate in. But nevertheless, you need to ensure that you are financially capable to do justice to that living being that you're getting in your house. It could be a dog or a cat, or it could be any other pet for that matter. Why? Because it's a responsibility, right? As I said, I keep using the word living being. So it's a living being. So you need to ensure that justice has been done and adequately provided for. And if you're just doing it for the sake of doing something, then I feel that you should avoid playing with somebody's life for that matter. And it is a financial commitment.
And it's a big responsibility. It's often something, and I'm sure that you've encountered this, is often something that is a spur of the moment decision. Today, your child has come to you and said, oh, Papa, I want to have a dog. Mama, I want to have a dog.
I know. It's almost always like that, where it's a kid who wants a dog and the parents just have to give in because they feel like it's their responsibility to meet every whimsy of the kids. So they tend to give in and just buy a dog. And then it becomes less of a pet and more of a toy for the kid to play with, which I feel is something that is wrong because the kid doesn't really understand the entire picture, the entire concept of what it is like to be responsible for another living being. So it should be a parent's decision, and they should be aware of what they're getting themselves into. They cannot just give in.
Okay, let's talk about breeds, right? And we have had a bit of an idea of Indian breeds. We'll get to that in just a bit. Availability and how easy it is to get one.
Yes.
But talk about the common breeds of dogs and cats, and which regions, like for example, if you were to talk about cooler areas, if you talk about places like Mumbai, places like Delhi, where you would get a pet, talk about the breeds that would be more appropriate for those regions.
Okay, so in Mumbai and Delhi, I have seen that the houses are mostly in apartment styles. So you don't have big bungalows with good big yards. So probably choosing dogs like apartment dogs like Shih Tzus or Pomeranians, Spits, Indian Spits, all these do really well and they get their quota of activity. Whereas if you see dogs like a Doberman or a German Shepherd, these are good if you have a farm. Like these are farmhouse dogs. You just leave them on the open land and they're going to run and they're going to get their exercise and they'll be happy.
Labradors?
Labradors also are big, and when we keep them in an apartment, again, I've seen a lot of people actually coming to me and saying that, ma'am, we want to walk. The dog is obese, okay, and we want to walk him, but in Mumbai we just don't know where to walk him because everything is under construction. So people are finding it difficult to walk their animals. And if walking is such a problem, then what about their exercise? What about their running around? Because all the dogs have a tendency to go and fetch, and they just like doing retrieving things.
And what about dogs like, okay, so you're talking about retrievers, but what about dogs like spaniels, cocker spaniels? They're pretty popular as well.
They are good. They are good. Cocker spaniels are a good breed again for apartment style of living.
What about cats? We've not spoken about cats.
Cats are good. You need to know that there's a difference between a cat and a dog.
The cat chooses you.
Yes. So I believe that once you understand what your cat is like, then you're never going to go back to a dog because they are so different, but both are grateful in their own ways. A dog is always going to consume a lot of your space, whereas a cat will not do that. They are more solitary in nature and they like being left by themselves. So if you are someone who works a lot and cannot be home for most part of your day, then maybe consider getting a cat because they need lesser attention, I would say. That's not true for all cats, but in general.
Okay, very quickly before we jump to Harsh again, the cost is something that we need to discuss because the options available is, and a lot of people are now talking about it, is that you should perhaps go and consider adopting. But then if you are buying, what are the kind of ranges that we're talking about?
So it totally depends on the breed of the dog that you're looking into. If you buy something that is small, let's say an Indian Spitz, a puppy should cost you around 5 to 10,000 rupees.
Okay.
And this I'm talking from good reputed breeders who can provide some paperwork. If you try to get labs, if you try to get Cocker Spaniels, if you try to get Shih Tzus, these will cost anywhere from 20 to 25,000. They can go even higher. There is a thing that goes on nowadays in the industry that if you want the papers, like if you want a puppy with the papers, that means that you need to pay a certain amount extra, which should not be the case, but it is.
Do you need the papers?
Ideally, yes, because the papers are basically the dogs which are registered with the Indian Kennel Club. So they know what breed, whose kids these are, who the grandparents are. They know the lineage. When you know the lineage, understanding a lot about genetic diseases that the dog is going to get, it's much easier.
Okay. We have to yet talk about the implications of bringing a pet home in terms of the general cost. But this initial amount, is that something that you can plan for? Is this more or less something that, you know, it's not very expensive. Of course, it can get very expensive, but here we're talking about 10,000 to 25,000 to 30,000 rupees. It's not something that really you need to plan for, right?
So, well, Alex, at this point in time, in the current situations that we live in, I think all those aspiring to own a pet would be able to spend about 20, 25,000.
Yeah.
So there's no need to make a special plan towards it, right? What is the bigger issue is a regular cost of maintaining that pet, right? Because it's a regular expense in terms of as I said, the food, shelter that you provide, in terms of some medical attention that the pet will require, in terms of the grooming that a pet requires on a monthly basis. So those are going to be regular committed expenses that you need to provide for. So you have to make sure that you have the financial resources. Well, there are certain insurances now. I mean, they're still at the nascent stage too.
Yeah.
But there are insurance companies who are planning to introduce this pet insurance.
We will in fact come to that in a bit, because that, I think, ultimately is a very important part of the financial aspect of owning a pet. Right. But the cost of upkeep, and who better to ask than a vet, right? You know about the medical costs. What do you need to, what absolutely do you need to set aside?
So now, again, I will go back to my patients. I have seen a lot of first puppy consults where the pet parents walk in with a small puppy and an entire bag full of products that the breeder has asked them to buy, or the person who is selling the puppy has asked them to buy, which are kind of unnecessary. Your dog does not need calcium supplements. They just need good food, and they don't need a lot of multivitamins. Again, just give good food and everything will be fine. So I feel that as soon as you get a dog, rather than buying anything, just see a vet first. I think that first consult is going to walk you through a lot on what to expect, when to expect, what the next few months are going to look like when the dog is just going to pop. Suddenly, within 6 months, first you have
They're going to grow very big.
Yes. It's like a 1 kilo puppy, and within 6 months, like, bam, you're 25 kilos. It's so rapid change. It's a rapid growth spurt that they get. And how to prepare for it, I think a vet is the first person who can tell you and guide you through all of this.
Okay, so, but let's talk about ranges, right? If you're talking about a 4 kg dog or a small cat,
Right.
if you're going up to a 25 kg dog, as you've pointed out, 70 kg, does that exist?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we'll call that an exception to the rule. But on an average, what are you spending?
So when you get the dog, you have to first look at the food. The food like costs also change depending on the weight of the dog. So the smaller the dog, it's a bit cheaper. But when you go higher, of course, the quantity that is required also changes. Any normal food bag, if you say like a subpar brand, then it will be around 500 to 600 for a 2 kilo, 3 kilo bag. But if you get into the nicer brands, which are well known and they are not Indian made, they come from abroad, they're sourced from abroad. Those bags can be anywhere between 1500 to 2000 for a 2 kilo bag.
And how many of those do you need?
Again, depends on the breed, but it can go from a few hundred grams to like 800 grams or
Per
so.
serving?
Per serving. No, it's a 24-hour ration normally.
Okay. So therefore, for a month, how much do you need?
Let's say half a bag if it's a small one, an entire bag if it's a big one.
So 2 kgs if it's a big one,
Yeah.
and 1 kg.
Yeah, so
Okay.
approximately 2,000 rupees for the food.
Yeah.
Then the basic vaccinations, they come to around 1,500 to 2,000 rupees. Your vet visits, you need to decide where you are living and which vet is around you, which
Sure.
is more accessible. What kind of care do you want for your pet?
Yeah.
In human healthcare also, we try to go for someone who is specialized, someone who is more experienced. So we do look for a place with better facilities. Like, okay, they have everything available.
Sure, but so if you're talking about one consultation every year, we're talking about a cost of what? Is that enough?
No.
How many consultations do you need?
So the first consult, I would say, can be $1,000.
Okay.
And then including the follow-up for the vaccinations, dewormings, that can be anywhere between, as I said, 2,000 rupees per vaccine or whatever.
Sure.
And yeah, all in all, let's say a 15 maybe.
Okay. 15,000 rupees
Yes.
for the first consultation plus.
No. First consultation will be 1,000 rupees.
Okay.
After that, maybe we'll take whatever the vaccine cost will be plus the basic follow-up cost, maybe $850.
Okay.
So
1,500 you're saying?
No, 15,000 a month, I believe. Is what you're referring to?
yeah,
The cost-
15,000 for the first maybe 4 months or 5 months.
15,000 for the first 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And then does it reduce over the course of the lifespan, or?
Not necessarily. Like, of course, the vaccination costs get pulled out, but then something else always turns up in place of it. Like, you need to then make sure that the dog is protected against ticks, or like they need grooming.
Okay.
In the first 4 months, the grooming session does not really come in the picture because we are protecting them.
Yeah.
And we cannot really send them out. But once that begins, then that becomes an added expense. So it kind of balances out, I believe.
Okay, so question to you, Harsh. It's not a small amount of money, to say the very least. And we're talking about regular upkeep and ensuring that the living being that you said it's so important, right? It's a responsibility. How do you budget for this on an ongoing basis?
So, Alex, what I gather with what Dr. Vrushali has also said, there's a cost of acquisition which could be approximately 25 to 30,000. Of course, you're not talking about exotic breeds
Yeah.
and all that bit. So, on an average, if that's your cost, so I'm sure that we can, in current times, anybody aspiring to own a pet would have that kind of resources available. What they need to be mindful about is the regular incurring cost that we're going to have. So, which is approximately, say, about 5 to 10,000 rupees on an average.
Yeah, on a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis. This is keeping in mind only the food, shelter, and regular upkeep.
Yeah.
We also need to be prepared if there is any medical emergency required. If there is a theft or your pet straying away, if there's a third-party liability, what if your pet goes and bites somebody else?
Oh, let's hope that doesn't
So there
happen.
could be a liability on you because of that as well. So there are a lot of things that we need to keep in mind. So one is to be mentally and emotionally prepared to have another living being in your family. The other is financial element. So all in all, I would suggest that if you're planning to have a pet, besides the acquisition cost, keep a provision of approximately 10 to 20,000 rupees every month. If you believe that you can afford that kind of money, only then should you get a pet. After you have a pet, of course, what you need to take care of is the regular expenses. You're going to be emotionally invested into the pet as well. So you need to manage yourself around there.
Yeah.
You cannot at a point say that, look, I'm facing problems. I could possibly be given a pink slip. I'm so sorry. You just abandon the pet. That should
Yes.
not be the intent.
Yeah.
So you need to provide that, you need to have enough provisions. There is insurance available for pets. besides that, even if you have an insurance that you buy, because that covers a host lot of things, but it's still in a nascent stage.
Where can you buy it from?
So there are insurance companies, general insurance companies, which are offering this
Okay.
pet insurance.
And what are the kind of premium?
So premium would depend entirely on the breed
Sure.
and on the sum insured. It's, as I said, it's a product in its nascent stages, not very popular yet. Not all insurance companies offer it. So it's going to be a trial and error even for the person who takes it. So the coverage is quite interesting, though. I was going through the details of pet insurance. So you would find surgical benefits being paid for, hospitalization.
Surgical, okay.
So I'll just enumerate a few things which are very interesting. So basically, it takes care of the bigger costs that you may look at. So one is the surgery. If your pet has to undergo certain surgeries, if there's an hospitalization of the pet, if there's an OPD treatment, if there is a terminal disease that your pet has been diagnosed of. If there is a mortality benefit as well, if the dog or your pet passes away, there's a third-party liability, as I spoke about. So there are a whole host of things that are covered. The sum insured is different because a surgery benefit will be capped at a certain point for a particular breed of a pet. There would be hospitalization which is capped. The third-party liability could go up to even 10 to 15 lakhs because that could be your liability if at all your pet goes and causes harm to some other person.
Yes.
So. And then there is a benefit which also covers your pet being stolen or lost or just straying away. So these benefits are included. The premiums are going to be higher at this juncture. I mean, it's not as reasonable as you may think of.
Yeah.
I was just looking at one particular quote that I was trying to just get a sense of. And if I looked at, say, surgery benefit at 30,000, the third party liability at 15 lakhs, OPD at about
15 lakhs.
The third party liability.
Right. You're taking. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you're
if you
talking
talk
about the benefit.
Yeah. The
Right.
benefits that are covered.
Sure.
It worked out, and I just picked up one random breed of a dog. It worked out to be about 28,000 rupees per annum plus GST. So that would go up to 33,000 rupees possibly.
Okay.
So it is expensive. The coverage is at a nascent stages. And this is just one example of all that I just picked up just to get a sense of what's happening. So yes, there is an insurance. It's going to be more of a trial and error. Like when you buy it, you possibly will learn what's happening out of it. I mean, what exactly is covered?
So, based on the measurement that we've done, we're talking about what, 1,20,000, 1 lakh or thereabouts, and that should cover more or less everything. I think when you're saying 10,000 rupees per month, that should cover an insurance as well.
Absolutely. So when I, just taking a rough estimate, because, everything depends on the breed of the pet that you're getting, of a dog or a cat. So it lots depends on, it's so variable. I mean, you cannot generalize and get one figure out.
Yeah.
But in case we take an average.
Yeah, which is what I'm looking for.
Average household buying a pet. Not exotic ones, not those Arabs sitting with two large lions around you, not those kind of images. Okay, if you're talking about a normal household buying pets, okay, so I think an estimation of approximately 10,000 rupees that you allocate towards the benefit of the pet per month should be, I think, a decent to begin with, and then I guess you should take references from your friends who already own pets. They'll be in a better position to give you an actual cost for the same breed, cat or a dog, with those variables in mind.
Now, the other aspect is, now that you know that you need 10,000 rupees per month for a good, we're talking about 10, 15 years in certain situations. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm right. I know that I'm right in this case. But you're talking about a significant expense over the course of the lifetime of your dog or cat. Do you set aside a fund for this? Is there a pet fund that you would recommend?
So given the popularity and given the escalation in costs, so as you said, it is only, we're not looking at only 5, 10 or 15 years, because once you have a pet, invariably you will have a pet for the rest of your life.
Sure.
Because I've seen people getting so emotionally invested into the pet that if somebody's pet has passed away, I see them having the same kind of pain as if a family member is not there.
No doubt.
And they immediately replace that pet with another one to, come back to it. So I guess once you have a pet, you would not ever have, never not have a pet, kind of a situation. So it's a lifelong expense. I mean, you would continue to have that member with you. And with escalation in costs, which is inflation, even it applies to pet food, treatment, etc., you would need to start providing for it, because you don't want a situation, as I said, to come to a point where you cannot keep a pet because of monetary constraints. You would not want to just simply abandon the pet at one point in time saying that, look, I've lost my job.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to do
That's
that.
not an option.
So at that point in time, when you're in distress, probably you would want that pet to be around you. I mean, I think that's exactly what, COVID taught us this, and people went and adopted pets during COVID because they were feeling alone and, all those kind of things. And of course, it reversed post-COVID. But anyways, so coming to a point where at any point in time you're not feeling good, the last thing you would want to do is abandon your pet at that
No
point in
doubt.
time. So yes, it's a regular expense, and if possible, and if you plan to continue to own a pet all your life, why not create a fund for it? It's not too expensive in any
And what
case.
kind of instruments would you put it in?
So like again, the same old stuff. See, you need to make sure that you have money.
Yeah.
The growth is not the criteria.
Yeah.
You don't really want your money to beat inflation by say 600 basis points.
Which is why I asked.
Yeah. So you have to understand the intent of creating that capital. The intent is what? Do you really want to make money out of this investment? No.
No.
You just want to ensure that at all points in time, I have enough money, whether or not I have a job or whatever problems otherwise I'm facing. I need to have money so that the food, shelter, and regular upkeep and well-being is taken care of.
So like a debt fund or something like
It could be a debt fund. It could be anything for that matter. I mean,
that. Or a bank deposit.
it could be a bank deposit or anything. I mean, just need to ensure that the objective is not returns maximization.
Yeah.
The objective is to have money. The well-being of the pet is taken care of.
Okay. So assume that you have the financial wherewithal. Okay. Now we've established that is a fact. But Harsh made an important point. A lot of people went out during COVID and got pets.
Yeah.
And that reversed at the end of it when they started going back to work, because it's an investment not just of money, but it's an investment of time.
Yes.
And I think that the second investment is far more crucial to bear in mind.
Right.
In what situations would you say that having a pet is a bad idea? When you say, for example, you're not at home or nobody's at home for 8.5, 9 hours in a day. Is that a big no-no?
No, that's not how I perceive it, because I myself leave my pets at home
Okay.
for over 9 hours.
Dogs and cats?
Yes.
Multiple.
You can never be a vet and not take one dog home, one cat home, just for fostering, just to put it back, nurse
Sure.
it back to health, and then just get attached and
I'll
keep it.
take your word for it.
It's
Yeah.
always that way. But I'm not talking about that short of a time frame. They can be left alone for 9 hours. It's about how you train them into leaving them alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you get them into a habit, it's very similar to how you leave your kids. Like if you train them, if you teach them that, okay, listen, I'm going to be at work from this hour to this hour, but I'll come back. I'll be there for you. Or if I'm not there, I'm going to send someone to provide whatever basic food, water, and a walk.
Mm-hmm.
If you can provide that much, the pet is going to be okay. They will be sad, but they will live.
Are there breeds that tend towards being depressive? Because I know for a fact that there are few that have complained that this is the case.
I think every breed, every dog who is attached will feel it. And like it's, I had one aggressive dog whom I lost 2 years back. And my current dog is very loving. But my aggressive one used to get more affected with me not being around, whereas the current one doesn't really care. She wouldn't even get off her bed to see and notice that, oh, I'm at home.
And this is a dog problem, not a cat problem, right?
Cats really don't care.
Which
like
is
at least my cat does not. She is just perched on her cat tray, and whoever comes, whoever goes, she just doesn't care.
And that's another thing to bear in mind. If you are going out to get a cat, you don't get it with the idea that you're going to go and cuddle that cat, because
Yeah.
consent is very important.
Yes. A cat likes her own space. A dog
Or his
will
own
be
space.
up.
Do you normally not get male cats?
We do.
Okay.
We do. But in general. But yeah, a dog will always be in your space. They're going to be jumping here, jumping there, drooling all over you for food, and they want to play, they want to go out for a walk. They're very needy that way. Cats can be a bit self-sufficient. So
All right, so we've covered quite a few aspects, and I think most importantly, we've covered what you need to know in terms of the financial aspects of it. I'm glad that we've kind of put a ballpark out there. Of course, this would it would be dependent on where you are living and what breed
Correct.
you have.
Yes.
But we've kind of given people a sense of what they need to bear in mind, what they need to think about. And so perhaps if they've drilled down to a specific breed, then they can go out and ask about.
I would say they need to use Google.
Yeah.
They really need to research their breeds, because the larger breeds can have really expensive emergency
Treatment.
surgeries.
Yeah.
And like when I was reading through this insurance, most of these surgeries are not covered.
Yeah.
Like when I was going through those things that they cover, they don't cover any of your electives. We call them electives because they are elective procedures like ovariohysterectomies. We neuter the pets. Those are not covered. They don't cover any dentals. Whereas these are the most common things that
And
you would
the costs of that could go up to?
Depending on the size, it can cost anywhere from 5,000 to 25,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in fact, I had a friend whose pet was going through some medical issues, and they landed up spending about 4 to 5 lakhs.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
Yeah, so it could go into a couple of lakhs, and as Dr. Vrushali has also pointed out, and I have said that pet insurance is at a very nascent stage.
Yeah.
It's going to be more of a trial and error,
Yeah.
because you've taken the insurance in an estimation that you would be taken care of, and when you land up for the surgery, you're told that this is not covered, because even the insurance companies are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not their fault. There's not enough of data point. It's not a very popular product.
Sure.
So pricing, everything depends on a lot of other factors as well.
So it might just make sense for you to set aside that amount. If you're talking about 4 or 5 lakhs, keep that available, like a contingency fund or an emergency fund like you keep for yourself. But I think we've covered most of the important aspects, and I'm sure that if my viewers and my listeners have questions, they can write to us, and I'm sure that Dr. Vrushali and Harsh will be happy to take them at some point in the future. Thank you so much to the both of you for taking the time and for speaking to us on big decisions, and thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully this conversation has helped you out. Do stay tuned, lots more coming up on NDTV Profit.